guys, Fulham and Wolves just played out a 1-1 draw in a interesting game, but I wouldn't say an event-filled game. It was quite a cagey start to the game. I think that wasn't really helped by the injury suffered by Harrison Reed, which eventually forced him off at half-time. And yeah, Fulham just never really got going in the first half, which was a big problem for them. They had a few half chances towards the end of the first half, but on the whole, it felt as though Wolves were the more comfortable in this game, especially as how there was sort of this anxiousness around the stadium that you could sort of sense, where it felt as though Fulham were expecting that they were going to be the team on the front foot, and that never really happened in the first half. Wolves did take the lead through Pablo Sarabia. It came from a goal which was really well set up by Raul Jimenez. And Jimenez is a player who has received, I would say, criticism over the past year or two, but almost like kind criticism. Like, people say, oh, he's not the player he was, but it's understandable, he went through a horrific injury, yada yada yada. But to me, I still think he offers something to Wolves. I don't think he is like one of the standout players at Wolves anymore, but I still think, even though he's not a prolific goal scorer, I don't think he ever really was, to be honest, but even though he's not scoring the goals he used to, I still think, you know, his intelligence that he has in playing at the number 9 for Wolves and setting up chances for teammates. Like, there's this statistic going around at the moment that a Wolves striker hasn't scored for a year in the Premier League, but they've still managed to stay up. Like, they finished, did they finish in the top 10 last season? I think they did. I know they didn't have the best finish to the end of last season, and they haven't had the best season so far this year, but they're still, at the moment, a couple of points outside the relegation zone. So it's not like, you know, they're absolutely dreadful. So to me, that sort of says, well, to score goals, you're not going to score the amount of goals they have, and I know they haven't scored loads, without having a striker who can at least provide something up front. So to me, he still offers something, and him and Matheus Cunha in this game I didn't think were too bad. And yeah, it was a really good layoff by Jimenez, and a really well taken finish from Sarabia as well. And that made it 1-0 at half time to Wolves. And yeah, you felt as though Fulham hadn't give it their best shot. Carlos Vinicius actually had 2 headed chances at the end of both halves, which you felt as though, had Mitrovic had those chances, and I know we always go back to, Mitrovic, he's so important to Fulham, they're not as good without him. But I feel as though if Mitrovic had have had those 2 chances, that it could have had a different result, really. I would expect him to at least score one of them, because Vinicius didn't do too badly with them, but he allowed Jose Sarr to have the opportunity to save them, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was Fulham's problem partially. So yeah, I felt as though Mitrovic was a bit of a miss for them in this game. And Fulham have had to go games this season without Mitrovic, and they've, you know, gone through this by either starting Vinicius or, on occasions, actually just playing Bobby Decordova-Reid up front on his own. And yeah, there's definitely a negative impact when Mitrovic isn't playing. But the second half, Fulham came out a different side. I think the substitutes at half time, where Harrison Reed and Decordova-Reid were both taken off. I think Reed was just struggling throughout the first half, to be honest, with his injury. And yeah, with Manor Solomon coming on, he definitely made a difference once again. I think it's 3rd game in a row he's come off the bench and scored as a substitute, which is incredible, really, and this was definitely the best goal he's scored so far in a Fulham shirt. It was a brilliant strike, and gave Jose Sarr very little chance of saving it. And yeah, he's definitely looking like a really good player at the minute, and I think he's probably done enough to start in the next game for Fulham. However, I think Marco Silva now faces a bit of a conundrum on what to do in the next couple of games, actually, with Brentford and Arsenal. Brentford away and Arsenal at home, two very tricky fixtures, especially now that we don't know if Harrison Reed's going to be available, and we know that João Paulinho definitely isn't going to be available because it was inevitable at some point he was going to pick up his 10th yellow card of the season and, you know, miss 2 games. But I don't think it's come at a very good time, to be honest. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Marco Silva goes about that problem. But yeah, second half, Fulham were definitely the better side. Wolves just sort of decided, right, we'll try and settle with what we've got. And in the end, they managed to get a point out of this game, which is definitely a good result for them, considering it's against Fulham, who this season are trying to fight for a spot in Europe. So, yeah, in the end of it, I think Wolves will be happy with what they've taken from this game. I think that they certainly were trying to, you know, slow the game down throughout the second half, although it did look like a bit of a nasty injury for Mateus Cunha. But there were a couple of other occasions, I think, where players went down a little bit too easily for some of the Fulham players, liking Jose Sarr being one of them, where he got a little dig in the ribs, but it definitely wasn't going to hurt him as much as he made out it did, if we're being completely honest. But yeah, it was a game which felt as though it was going to heat up at any moment. It was sort of bubbling under the surface for a while in the game. I think on both teams you had a lot of Portuguese and Spanish speakers for either side. Obviously Wolves are well known for that, but on Fulham's team you have Willian, Andreas Pereira, and Pereira, by the way, is obviously, well, can be at times a bit of a hothead. Vinicius as well up front. So yeah, it felt as though there was a lot of I don't know what you'd call it, but talk between players that you know, you felt as though something could kick off any moment here. So yeah, it was one of them really. But in the end, I think a draw for Wolves is obviously the better result than it is for Fulham. I think Fulham will feel a bit disappointed, not just with the result, but how they actually started this game, because they just really failed to get going. I thought Wolves did defend well throughout the game. They stopped Fulham from actually getting many proper chances, like chances where you think, oh, he's got to score that. And I think you have to look at the two fullbacks. For me, I thought were brilliant. Nelson Semedo and Hugo Bueno. Well, Dawson and Kilman in centre back, they were very good too. But the fullbacks, they kept both Willian and De Cordova-Reid very quiet in the first half, and then when Solomon came on, he definitely caused Semedo a few problems. And I don't think there was anything Semedo could do about the goal. It was just a brilliant strike from Solomon. But they definitely minimised the impact that the two wingers for Fulham could have on this game, especially Willian. Willian's been a player who's sort of had a bit of a throwback season to when he was at his best for Chelsea, because we obviously know he had that poor 12 months at Arsenal, but he's looked nothing like the player this season that he was at Arsenal. In fact, he at times this season he's produced some of the best form that he's produced throughout his Premier League career. So, you know, it's been a good season for Willian, and I think both Wolves fullbacks did a really good job at stopping him from having an impact on this game. Because he did actually switch sides at half time with Solomon, a left winger, coming on for a right winger in De Cordova-Reid. So yeah. Fulham, though, I think the defending for the Wolves goal was definitely questionable, because it felt as though they were all looking towards the ball, like how can we get to the ball, rather than trying to pick up who or trying to pick up what's going on around them. And that's where it was Pablo Sarabia who was left in the space. And I don't think anyone properly acknowledge the space that Raul Jimenez was in initially either. So that there was a bit of a problem there with Fulham in terms of getting into shape and also picking up men or even just like acknowledging where they are more than anything else. So I think that's something that Fulham need to work on, because they haven't been bad defensively this season, but it does feel as though at times, even though with the form that Tim Ream and Issa Diop have been in, they can be a little bit, I don't know what the phrase is, but almost too eager to, dive in or run into a tackle, like win the ball rather than focus on defending areas, if that makes sense. So I think that's something that Marco Silva can definitely work on with the players. But yeah, it wasn't a horrendous performance from Fulham. I think the key thing to take away from it, the positive thing for them, will be that they did come out a better side in the second half rather than the first half. So they definitely, saw what they were doing wrong and decided, right, we need to have a bit more of a say on this game. We need to up the intensity and all the rest of it. And they definitely did that. They were definitely the better side in the second half. But I think a lot of that has to do with like the way the game was going and the fact that Wolves didn't feel as though they needed to push for another goal. They felt quite happy with the goal they got, and that they could hopefully defend that and try and hold on to it, or try and, once they concede it, try and hold on to the draw and not risk losing any more points, if that makes sense. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.